So hello and welcome to the Module 3 additional material. My name is Julia and I will talk a little bit about calculations for shawl design now. First of all, we need to know what are stitch patterns and stitch pattern modules in this case. As described in the handout already, stitch pattern modules are the very basic construction elements of every shawl design. Each swatch contains one stitch pattern module, and each stitch pattern repeat makes one pattern module. So first, let's look at an example. This is a stitch pattern module for a rectangular construction, and the section outlined in black forms one module. So it's just one repeat. This is this, excuse me, this section outlined in black, and we got a left side section and a right side section. The reason for this right and left side sections is that here are central double decreases, these stitches here, shown by my mouse pointer at the moment. And if these were done at the edges, we would have a problem with stitch count. This is the reason why they are replaced by this SSK and knit two together stitches here on the edges. Because on the edges there is no possibility to work additional yarn overs like here right after repeat, so we need a left side section and a right side section to compensate for this. This module repeat consists of 10 by 16 stitches. It's 10 stitches wide and 16 rows high. And of course, the left and right side sections are the same height, but different in stitch count. The right side consists of 5 columns by 16 rows, and the left side consists of 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches, and 16 rows as for all other sections here. Basically, this section outlined in black is one stitch pattern module in our case, and this repeat can be combined then to form shawl constructions. Let's look at the details. So if we take our chart shown on the left and deconstruct it into the basic elements like we just talked about, this blue rectangle here is the left side part. The pink part is the repeat of this chart, this stitch pattern module of this chart, and the green section here is the right side part of this module. Shawl designs are created by combinations of these modules. So the side panels, as I sometimes call them, or the side sections, as we recall, blue is the left side and green is the right side, do not change. They just are stable. They are not repeated. We remember that the section outlined in black is repeated, and this is only the pink section in this case. So we can build, in this case, a shawl, which is a rectangular shawl, like using bricks, like these pink bricks here. So basically, we could work any number of repeats of our pink sections. So we could work, for example, one, of course, the right side edging, sorry, not the edging, the right side part of the chart. Then we can work 3 repeats of the section outlined in black, and then we would work our left section. Basically, you can replace these 3 repeats here by any number of repeats you would like to work. So it doesn't make any difference within your stitch pattern modules whether you work 3 repeats or 4 or 5, etc. It does make a difference in your resulting shawl width, of course. So the more repeats you are working, the wider your shawl will be, obviously. So, and the next thing is this building brick, as I called it, consisting of one right side part, 3 repeats of the main repeat of this section outlined in black in the chart, on the left side, is one building block, for one repeat of the stole, so to speak. And we can repeat this block as often as we want. In this case, it's shown for 4 repeats of this building block, and we can virtually repeat as often as we would like to. Just the more often you work this building block repeats, this one, and this one, the longer your shawl gets, basically. So basically, stitch pattern modules are your building blocks when designing a shawl. So let's talk about calculations in detail. The example I will use today is the shawl pattern White Atlantic. It's one of my earlier shawl patterns. It's worked in fingering weight in a lovely silk, pure silk yarn from Art Fibers. And I will show you in detail how to calculate the number of stitches to cast on for this stole, and how to find out, because there are 2 stitch patterns, 2 stitch pattern modules, so to speak, how to do the transition from one stitch pattern module towards the next. Let's first have a look at the charts for White Atlantic. White Atlantic has 2 main charts, listed here as White Atlantic chart 1. This is this one. It's a rather huge stitch pattern. And again, the section outlined in black is the repeat. And we got a second chart named White Atlantic chart 2. And in this case, it's a bit smaller, got a different stitch count. We will learn about that later. And again, the section outlined in black is repeated. White Atlantic has got 2 additional charts. This is this small round border, as I call it first. This is the very outer part of the shawl. It's got a left side, this here, and a right side, this one. Basically, it's the same chart, just mirrored. And it's got an edging worked at the very beginning and the very end of the shawl. And this has a repeat 2, which is shown here again by this black outline. So let's have a look at this White Atlantic chart 1. The repeat is 24 stitches wide. The right side has 6 stitches. The left side has 19 stitches. And it consists of 26 rows. The second chart for White Atlantic has a repeat of 12 stitches, 6 stitches on the right side and 7 stitches on the left side. It consists of 18 rows. The small round borders are basically a repeat of 4. As you can see here, we start with 4 stitches on each side, increase to 7 stitches in between by here this triple yarn over, and decrease this 3 stitches we increase here in this yarn over, again at row 6 in this case. So basically we work 4 stitches, increase to 7 in between, and arrive at 4 again after having worked row 6. So then the whole thing is repeated. The edging has a repeat of 12 stitches. Right side is 5 stitches wide, left side is 12 stitches wide, and it consists of 8 rows. I think I mentioned this already, but before you take any measurements, and we will transition from or stitch counts to the calculations, actually, we need our swatches, and we need to measure our swatches. So before you take measurements, please block your swatches. Always treat your swatches the same way you would treat your finished object. Otherwise, your measurement will not be accurate. So in my swatch for White Atlantic chart 1, the repeat of 24 stitches measures 12 centimeters, which equals 4.25 inches. And the height, in this case 26 rows, are 10 centimeters high, which equals 4 inches. So when after measuring, we can then calculate our stitch and row gauges. In our case, for White Atlantic chart 1, the stitch gauge is 24 stitches equal 12 centimeters. and the row gauge, 26 rows equal 10 centimeters, which are 4 inches, as stated before. The same thing is done for the second chart, and we have a slightly different gauge, but this doesn't matter. Actually, this is a shawl, not a garment. So basically, if your gauges are very, very different, then maybe you should consider taking this into account. Maybe use another different stitch pattern, or just use less repeats or more repeats, depending whether your gauge is larger or smaller. But this is details. Basically, I usually do not take this into account, but just assume both are working at the same gauge. I always take the smaller one, like the more narrow stitch gauge, for my basic calculations, just as an addendum. But basically, don't bother with it. It's not really important. It's just a detail, and it's important for garments. There is very important for garments, but not for shawls in this case. So for the second chart, we have a stitch gauge of 12 stitches is 6 centimeters, and the row gauge you can read for yourself here. So basically, we just need our swatches and then measure them and calculate our gauge. This is the very first step in every shawl design. So we are now ready to do some calculations. We know our stitch gauge, which is 24 stitches in 12 centimeters. And so we can calculate by using this assumptions that we had 24 stitches in 12 centimeters means 2 stitches per centimeter, basically. And we can calculate it the other way around. How many stitches per inch we get? It's 5.1 in this case. So this is very, it might be looking a bit difficult, but basically it's very, very basic. Gauge calculations, excuse me. You just take your stitch gauge and calculate how wide is one repeat of your chart. How wide is one repeat of one stitch pattern module, basically. Because this is a very basic number you will need later for calculating how many repeats do you want to work. Because basically you might have an idea how big your shawl should be. And this is the method to go. You just find out the width of and height, basically, but more on that later, of one repeat of one stitch pattern module, and then calculate how many repeats do I have to work to achieve this desired width. The same calculations are done for the second chart, and this is what results in it. So now that we know our gauges and our width of one stitch pattern module, we can continue with calculating the width. Respectively, we want to calculate the number of repeats. So repeat consisting of 24 stitches in chart 1 equals 12 centimeters. So we would like to knit a stole which is 60 centimeters in total. And so we just calculate how many repeats do fit in 60 centimeters. And in this case, it's 5 repeats. As we got our side stitches and the small round borders too, which also acquire some space, so I would consider working only 4 repeats. I said because of the side stitches and because of the small round border. So 4 repeats should be sufficient here. Now that we know how many repeats we want to work, we can calculate the stitches we need to cast on. We decided to work 4 repeats of the main chart, of this main repeat of the stitch pattern module, the section outlined in black. So this makes 4 times 24 stitches, which equals to 96 stitches. Additionally, that's not to forget, that's very important, we additionally got our edge stitches, 6 stitches on the right side. Now makes an additional 25 stitches we need to cast on. Otherwise, we would just have our stitches for the stitch pattern repeat and not for the other stitches. But we need our side stitches to work our shawl. And we got our small round border, which is 4 stitches on the right and 4 stitches on the left, which totals to additional 8 stitches we need to cast on. So in total, we have our 96 stitches from our 4 repeats of this section outlined in black. Then we got additional 25 stitches for the edges or the side, side stitches, and additional 8 for the small round border, which is the edging in this case. And 96 plus 25 plus 8 are 129 stitches in total. So this would be the total number of stitches we need to cast on for this design. If we would work just 3 repeats and not 4, we would achieve 3 times 24 stitches, or 72 stitches, and the rest would stay the same. We got the same amount of edge stitches and the same amount of small round border stitches. So our total number of stitches to cast on if we were working 3 repeats instead of 4 would be 72 plus 25 plus 8 equals 105 stitches. So you can see by looking at the stitch count, basically 3 repeats are 105 stitches, and if we work 1 additional repeat, as shown here, we work basically 1 times 24 stitches more, because we got 1 more repeat in this. So yeah, in this case, 3 repeats means 105 stitches to cast on in total, including everything, including the side stitches, the repeat, and the small border stitches we need. In case you're interested with how wide this shawl would be in this case, as we know that one repeat equals 12 centimeters. In this case, we have 3 of them, so this center section, the repeat section, would be 36 centimeters wide. Just in case you wonder what is this in inches, if you take the metric measurement in centimeters or meters or whatever, doesn't matter, and divide it by 2.54, then you got your measurement in inches. I'm sorry that I didn't state here all measurements in both imperial and metric units, but I guess you can divide by 2.54 on yourself to find out how many inches this is. So now let's talk about pattern transition. So we have not only a White Atlantic 1 chart, as shown earlier, we also got our White Atlantic 2 chart, and they got different stitch counts. So we would like to know, how can we achieve a transition between a section where we're using our White Atlantic 1 chart and a section where we are using the second chart, second main chart. Remember, we are working 3 repeats in this case, and we have got 105 stitches total, which means we have our small round border, then our side stitches on the right side, then we work 1, 2, 3 repeats of the section outlined in black, and then we got our left side, and then a small round border again. So this is the basic layout for this shawl. This is one of these building blocks I talked about earlier. Very similar to this pink, blue, green picture I showed you in the beginning. This is this building block for one repeat of this White Atlantic 1 chart section of the stole. So our White Atlantic 2 stitch pattern has a repeat of 12 stitches. And 7 side stitches on the left side, shown here, and 6 stitches on the right side. Basically, this is the same for White Atlantic. Sorry, I just realized this should state White Atlantic 2 here, not White Atlantic 1. But it's the same stitch count, basically. It's a different side. Please take this into account. It's blue, not green. Sorry, it's my my mistake here, should be a 2 here. So the small round border does not change in our transition. We just continue working the small round border on the right side and on the left side. So as our repeat of White Atlantic 1 is 24 stitches wide, and White Atlantic 2 is only 12 stitches wide, so the question is, how can we fit this total number of stitches for our second section and this first section together? So basically, how can we work a transition? The most important part when doing transitions is that the stitch count you have got at the end of the first section has to equal the stitch count afterwards. So this stitch count, 105 stitches. The main panel means it's minus this small round borders. The main panel is this green thing, are 97 stitches. As our small round borders do not change, we need 97 stitches in the second section to make our design work. So the question is now, how many repeats of our White Atlantic 2 chart can I fit into this part where this question mark is shown? Basically, we see that we have got 6 stitches here. That stays the same. 2 repeats of White Atlantic 2 fit 1 repeat of White Atlantic 1. But the edge stitches are not the same. So it's not like just work the double amount of White Atlantic 2 chart repeats. This doesn't work because these side stitches here, the left side, are not the same. So basically, how many stitches or how many repeats of White Atlantic 2 can be fit in here? And in this case, it's relatively easy. We got 7 side stitches on the left and 19 here for the first chart. So basically, the question is 7 plus how many stitches equal 19? And in this case, it's relatively easy. It's 12 stitches, of course, because 7 plus 12 equal 19. So basically, we can fit in another repeat of White Atlantic 2 with 12 stitches, and we end up with 6 plus 7 plus 7 times 12 equaling 97 stitches too. So our stitch count here at the end of section 1 equals the number of stitches in the next section if we work 1 additional repeat of White Atlantic 2. So this is it for the calculation so far. In case you've got any questions, please just feel free to ask me via email anytime, and have a very nice evening. Goodbye.